Hello, my name is Robin Stewart. I'm autistic, and for over 15 years I've been teaching people about autism. I co-host a BBC podcast called 1800 Seconds on Autism, and I've written 3 books: The Independent Woman's Handbook for Super Safe Living on the Autistic Spectrum, The Autism Friendly Guide to Periods, and out in 2021, The Autism Friendly Guide to Self-Employment. For World Autism Awareness Week 2021, I was in Holmewood School in North London, and they asked me some questions, and I'm going to answer them. The first question is, how can you support students accepting their autism? Well, I think obviously it depends on each individual person, but I think knowing that being autistic there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is different, and that the world is mainly designed for and by non-autistic people, but you have as much right to be here as everyone else, and maybe things are a bit more difficult, but then there could probably be things that you find easier that maybe non-autistic people don't find so easy. So the next question is how to help students when they get stuck. I'm not sure of the context of this question, but sometimes autistic people can get very stuck on a particular idea or a particular emotional experience, and it can be very hard for them to think about anything else. And so the first thing I think to know is that a lot of autistic people have alexithymia, which means that you feel emotions, but it's difficult to identify which emotions you're feeling and to be able to communicate it. If you imagine that a person's brain is like a glass of water, and if you put food colouring into that glass of water, the food colouring will colour all of the water. So if the food colouring represents an emotion, and then other demands, things you have to do, if that was represented with a dishcloth, and you put the dishcloth into the water, then the food colouring would get onto the dishcloth along with the water. So anything you do, once you're feeling intense emotions, the emotions will affect it, and if you can't identify which emotions you're feeling, that can be very difficult. I think also I think that you need to have education that's so detailed about how emotions work, and that emotions, they sort of come in gradients, that you can be a little bit sad or you can be really, really sad, and what that feels like might be different within your body, and how it affects your thinking might be different. So I think to be able to get unstuck, I think it's important to be able to identify your emotions, know how they affect you, and know the things that help to sort of release the emotions a bit. So that might be almost like a filter for your emotions to sort of, like deal with and process them. A bit like when you take kidney beans out of a packet and you put them into the sieve to get the water out. A bit like that, that if the water was your emotions, you have to not completely get rid of them, because there will still be a bit of water on the kidney beans, but you just have to be able to deal with it in some way. And I think that some of that takes maturity, but I think also it's really important to give people space to do that. And I think, just be aware that school environments can have a lot of rules of, like, I know that listening to music and taking a nap helps, but when I was in school, I don't think those things were real options. So I think being very aware of that there's a lot of things in place where you can't do this and you can't do that. I think that's important to just be aware that that's going to have an impact on how someone's able to deal with things. It could also be wanting detailed information that could get you stuck. I think that you, as an autistic person, you have to learn that the world is kind of designed by and for non-autistic people, and they're not generally quite as detail orientated as autistic people, and so sometimes there isn't an answer, and sometimes also we're seeking to find an answer, but we don't know what it is yet, like how many stars there are in the sky, for example. So I think sometimes those kind of infinite things can feel they can get you stuck. And I think with that, it's having things that ground you in the moment, and make you feel safe, and also just learning to accept it. And I think some of that probably comes with maturity. The next question is about pathways for leaving school and employment. And I think this was asked by a parent who has sons, but I think that this answer hopefully will be applicable to any gender. What I would say is that it's incredibly important to find your tribe, to find people that you connect with on a genuine level, and also that you are able to manage your own friendships. I think that's important. That too often young people, they get into young adulthood and they're used to their parents organising their social life for them, and finding things for them to do and stuff, and actually it can be really socially isolating if you don't know how to maintain friendships and how to come up with different things to do together. And so I think that's really important, to find your people, but also to have the skills to be able to manage those relationships and also manage conflicts, because people fall out with each other all the time, but there's big fallouts and little fallouts, and so knowing how to manage that I think is important. I think self-employment can be really good for a lot of autistic people, which is why I wrote the book about self-employment. But I think if you're thinking about employment, I think it's got to be something that they want to do for a job, and that they value. So it might be their special or intense interest, but it might not be, because maybe you just want to do that for fun. So I think it's good to have lots of work experience in different places. I'd highly recommend doing something like Project Search. So Project Search is a supported internship program, I think that's what you call it officially, and basically it's for people with disabilities, including autistic people, and you are attached to an organisation, which it might be a hotel or it might be a hospital. I know that Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital in London do it, and basically there's a group of people who do a placement, and the placements rotate over the course of a year, so everyone gets to do a bit of everything, and it gives you the opportunity to try out different job roles. And then there's also an education component within it, where people learn about different aspects of work and I guess self-management. But I think it's really good. I think that the UK, or in London anyway, one of the UK providers is Care Trade UK. Care as in CARE, Trade UK, I think. I'll look it up. But I think that kind of thing can really help a lot of autistic people. But I think also informal work experience can really help, because I think that you need to have the experience. Like, you can't learn these things in theory. That you can learn that you should turn up to work on time and all of those things, but when you haven't had to deal with the tube and the trains and whatever else and all the other things that comes along with adult life, in a way that you don't have to deal with it when you're a kid because someone else does it for you, I think you learn by having those experiences. So I think work experience is really important, because if it doesn't work out, it's okay, it's just work experience. There's a lot of autistic people out there who are really well qualified, PhDs, masters, etc., but they really struggle to find work and to keep in work, and also to move up the ladder, because often within a career ladder, managerial positions involve managing people. I think autistic people can manage people, but I think you have to learn how to do that, and I think it takes a lot of self-awareness. The next question is about difficulties at school. I definitely had a lot of difficulties at school. I had a lot of trouble understanding things. Like, if something didn't seem logical or have a good reason, I had a problem with it. I also wasn't scared to stand up and argue. If I felt something wasn't right, I generally would argue. And also, I didn't really have a lot of theory of mind as a kid. So, being able to understand what someone else is thinking or what they're anticipating. So when somebody would whisper, "You're a spastic," I would turn around and shout at them. But see, they were anticipating that because they said it so quietly the teacher wouldn't be able to hear, and the teacher can't really punish someone for saying something that the teacher didn't hear, but they definitely heard me turn around and shout at them to not call me a spastic. So that kind of thing was very difficult. I think also being lonely was difficult, and I think I was just really overwhelmed that I have this thing called well, actually I can't pronounce it. I'm not even going to try. But basically my eyes are constantly moving up and down, and it makes reading very difficult and tiring. And I didn't really understand what a problem that was until I was like in my late 20s, and that I think that really got in the way. And also I think just the physical fatigue there was a lot of sitting and all that, and I think it just didn't really work for me. What helped was having teachers that were kind, and there were some really kind teachers, and also particularly in primary school, I was like people valued me, recognised my value, and I think the other children also recognised my value. Not that I was any more valuable than anyone else, I don't mean it like that. What I mean is, like, I was good at the computer, and so kids could ask me for help on the computer, and they were good at other things that I wasn't good at, and I could ask them for help. And so I think that that kind of, I don't know if you'd say skill evaluation, but just that recognition I think is really important, to not just feel like you're completely useless. I think it's very important, and it can't just come from the adults in your life. It's got also, you've got to have people around you, you've got to have people that will support you, who are your peers. And I think understanding that difference between peers and adults in your life when you're a child is important. The next question is about gaining independence, tips and support. I think you need to start gaining independence as soon as you can. I was always sort of chomping at the bit. I want more. I want to be able to do more. And yeah, I've always been quite brave. I asked my mum recently, did you teach me that? But apparently I was just always like that. So yeah, I think learning it from early on. So things like managing money. So to start off with, when I was a kid, lunch cost £2. I mean, now it's like a fiver, but this is like, in the like late 80s, early 90s, late 90s, I suppose. It's, yeah. I mean, by the time I was in high school, that would have been 1998. So anyway, but lunch was like £2. And so to begin with, my parents would just give me £2 every day. Then they started giving me a week's worth of dinner money. Then they gave me a month's worth of dinner money so that I would learn to manage it. And I did. And then, when I was 13, I was allowed to go on the bus on my own to the local town, and then take the bus home again. And so gradually I increased my independence. But also, when I was like 18, I went to Manchester and I didn't tell my parents about it. I was living away from home at the time. I was living in college, but I didn't tell them. And then when I was 21, I went to America, and they found out in a newspaper 3 weeks before I went, but I didn't want to tell them because I didn't want them to make me anxious. So so I was always kind of pushing at the boundaries of independence. I think that the thing to do is to teach your children to have backup plans, and to I have a little routine that I do when I walk out the door. I do it at least twice. I just check my phone, my wallet and my keys, and I do it twice, and I always do it with my foot in the door just in case I've forgotten my door keys. And so I know when I leave the house I have my wallet, my phone and my door keys, and that's kind of all I need. When I travel, I meticulously plan, because I have a lot of problems of executive functioning, like a lot of other autistic people. So that's executive functioning is working out what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, in what order. An example of like somebody that a young person that has poor executive functioning, they probably, I mean, this is just one example, but they probably bring all of their books to school all the time, including their PE kit, even on days when they don't have PE or they don't need those books. Probably often have their shirt untucked, often forget things, lose things, those kind of things. That's all executive functioning. And I have quite poor executive functioning, so I have to really plan ahead, because in the moment I just get overwhelmed and I can't think clearly. So I think knowing yourself is really important, and being able to teach your children to recognise their strengths and their weaknesses. So my strengths are that I'm really good at organising things ahead of time. My weaknesses are not great in the moment, and if I get distracted, if someone's talking to me, I can really struggle to stay on task, and then I lose things. And so I have to sometimes just be like, can you just stop talking, please, because I have to do this, and I'll put my noise cancelling headphones on or whatever. But I think that to be independent, I think you just have to really understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and I think also just gradually getting more and more independent and having a plan A and a plan B, and knowing what to do if you get really stuck, and knowing people that you can ask, and like really trustworthy friends. Like, for example, my mum and dad, they would help me out whatever was happening. Even if I'd done something that they didn't approve of, they would still help me. There's other friends I could ask, like my friend Ben, for example. I know that if I really needed help, he would help me. And there's lots of other friends like that I just know that there are people that I really can ask for help. And I think if you can help your young person to find those people, I think that's important. The next question is about making friends. I didn't really have many friends at school, in high school. In primary school I had friends, but I think that's really important to find people who really appreciate you for who you are. And I think I'd say to parents, don't stop looking, like go to different social groups and arts and all those things. When I was a kid, my mum took me to all these different groups, and then some of them I didn't enjoy, and so we didn't go to those again. I mean, generally my mum had to take me to everything twice. The first time I hated it because it was new and different. The second time I either loved it or hated it, and so that was kind of, if I didn't like it, that's fine, we can do something else. But so I went to loads of different groups, and I think that was a very helpful experience, to try all those different things, to have that experience of trying some things and not liking some things and liking other things. I think also, no matter how niche your child's interests or hobbies are, I bet there are people out there who enjoy the same things. And so I think finding those people, and there's a website called meetup.com, and they have meetup groups. I went to a writer's circle once, which was really good. But they have all kinds of meetups, and so that would be a way of connecting with other people. I think, and also I think the thing about the face-to-face groups is that maybe when your child's young, it might be that you go with them. I think online spaces can be really good for young people, but obviously there's a lot of dangers in the online space, and I do think that it's important that as parents that you tell your children what it is that you're worried about. The next question is about handling bullying. Well, I think this kind of leads on from the last question about friends and about vulnerability. And I think really understanding the difference between teasing and bullying is important. And I think also, like at school, if you're a teacher, teaching kids that, if someone says that they don't want you to call them whatever you're calling them, then you have to listen, because otherwise that's bullying. I think having that clear definition is important. I think also understanding about theory of mind is really important, like understanding that you as an autistic person might find it harder to think about what a non-autistic person is thinking and feeling, and also what that non-autistic person is anticipating will happen next when they do something. So I mentioned earlier in this video about when I was in school and a kid would, whisper in my ear, "You're a spastic," and I'd turn around and shout at them. That kid was anticipating that I would turn around and shout at them, and that they wouldn't get in trouble because there's no way the teacher could have heard them whispering. They just, they liked that reaction, and it was fun for them, and it stopped the class, obviously. And so I think that kind of thing happens a lot. I think also just knowing that you don't have to hang out with those people. If people are making you feel uncomfortable, doing things you don't want to do, you don't have to do it. You can walk away, and there are other people. And I think that these two questions, the how to make friends and the bullying question, I think they go hand in hand, because I think if you think that this is your only option, remembering that when you're a child, your universe is your family, maybe your local playground, and your school. That's it. There's no other world. You can't just pop on a bus and just go where you want to go. Like, I live in London and I can go anywhere. I can cycle anywhere. I can go to South East London, North London, West London. I can go all these different places, and I can go to different pubs and bars and different community spaces, and I have all of that choice because I'm a grown up. That's what being a grown up entails. But when you're a child, you don't have that. It's only really what your parents provide you with. So if you're a parent and your child's getting bullied, then I think you need to help your child to understand kind of what's going on, particularly the theory of mind stuff. But I think also finding people that they can be friends with, like going to different places and looking for those people, and eventually I think you'll find them. Independent travel is the next question. I guess it's how do you do it. I think that you increase the person's confidence. So you talk through the journey and the things that they might be worried about, and also like the etiquette, and even things like where to look. Like, if a baby's crying, don't look at the crying baby, because the mum might think that you're like judging them or something. Look out the window. That looking out the window is generally a good idea, unless there's something like if there's a fight happening outside or something, then maybe look at your lap. If there are spare seats, don't sit next to someone if there's a spare seat where you can just be by yourself, unless it's someone obviously, then it's all right. But I think basically you just have to learn everything in small detail and practice, and know that you have your phone if you need help. But I think also, don't be frightened, parents, of your child making mistakes or things going wrong, because nowadays you're only a phone call away. And I think that the main thing, there are awful things that happen, obviously, of course there are, but I think the main thing is to teach a young person how to deal with these situations themselves, because you won't always be there. So I think don't be scared that something might go wrong, like the train might break down, or the bus might break down, or the bus might not come, or they might get on the wrong bus, because all of those things happen, fairly regularly. When you, obviously this is, in London, thinking about how many trains and buses and tubes and things there are, really, it was amazing that they run so well. But yeah, I mean, it is frequent that the trains are stopped or whatever. So I think just being aware that you got to just deal with it. And I think having a lot of strategies in place, like particularly around sensory issues, because that can be a problem when you're traveling. So like, I have noise cancelling headphones, but also I found cycling is really good, because I feel generally that that's a better sensory environment for me. The next question is, um, the next question is, how did Robin get into work, and did she have any reasonable adjustments? I tried normal jobs, like I worked for an insurance company for a bit, and I also worked for a large computer shop and a small computer shop. Um, but I found that I think it was probably more my physical disabilities that were a problem, because I have cerebral palsy and lax ligaments and poor muscle tone. And basically, what that means is that I really have to listen to my body in terms of pain management, and I can't stand up or sit down too much. I have to do a mix, and I really have to listen to my body as to when it wants me to sit and stand. And I mentioned earlier in this video that I work funny work hours, and some of that is because physically I need a lot of rest. I also have long COVID at the moment, so that probably doesn't help. But even before long COVID, I still needed time where I wasn't concentrating. It takes me a while to sort of reload, I suppose. So the reasonable adjustments, I mean, I really wanted to be an IT technician, and they did an occupational health assessment without me. And they decided that I wouldn't be able to do it. And so then I became a software tester, and I found that they're boring and repetitive. There's a lot of people that love software testing. I'm not one of them. But they did give me a special ergonomic chair. I'm not sure how much that helped. I really, sitting down all day really messed with my CP, but also having jobs where I stood up all day also messed with it. So I really have to be, and it's not like I can work at a standing desk either. Like it's not, like standing in itself is painful. I've got to be, moving around. And so like training in a way is perfect for that, because I can sit and then stand and sit and walk around, and I don't have to, and when I say stand, I just mean, get up and then walk around. I don't stand still very much. If you look at me, I'm always kind of moving. So yeah, I mean, everybody I met like in the insurance company, they're really nice. And then, in the computer shops, yeah, I mean, I think I was really very focused on the customers. And when you work for an employer, you also have to be focused on what the employer values, not just what you think is important to the customer, like selling insurance and things like that. And I just found self-employment worked better for me. I felt like I could stick to my values more, and also that I could take breaks when I needed to. Flexibility is the last question, or the last topic. I think being flexible is something that you definitely learn. So just things like you don't always use the same knife and fork, don't always use the same plate, don't always use the same cup, don't always sit in the same place, don't always have the same thing on Friday, don't always take the same route to school, etc., etc., etc. Just building into everyday life, changes within the schedule, or little changes, and that being a very normal thing, so that your young person doesn't get stuck on, one cup or one plate. And I know that sometimes, obviously, you can feel like you don't want your child to be so distressed about, the change. But that distress is natural and it's okay. And obviously, with anything, there's boundaries. But I think particularly if you've got a really young child, that introducing flexibility from an early age is important, because it just gets harder the older you get, the less flexible you are. So I think just really working very hard on adding in, if you like, flexibility challenges. So like for about a year, maybe 2 years, I had the same thing at the local Indian restaurant, and then I decided that I should change, and so I ordered the thing I had normally and something else, and I ate the something else, but I knew that the thing I had normally was on the table and available, and I coped with it. And then from then on, I could choose different things. So I think it's really important, to always be challenging your flexibility.